This is Public Research. I'm Daniel Schwartz. When photos emerged in December 2025 of Jeffrey Epstein with Noam Chomsky and Steve Bannon, many people saw a strange pairing. Andrew Koss saw something more revealing. Koss calls the image, quote, the perfect symbol of the direction taken by a segment of the American right.
There's a kind of anti-Americanism that spans the radical left and the radical right. And the difference between Tucker Carlson and Noam Chomsky just isn't that big anymore. This is a kind of political strategy. If you blame the Jews for your problems, Jews are a very small part of any political coalition. Most coalitions can afford to lose the Jews. If you're going to choose the people to pick on, you want to pick on the people who are numerically smallest. You have this whole structure of hating Jews that's out there, and you tie it to this sort of idea that everything we've done is wrong, right? The ultimate argument that Cooper and Carlson are making, which is an argument that Chomsky has played with too, is that World War II was not the good war, that was the bad war also. And so this is all a narrative about America being the bad guy.
If in 2032, Tucker Carlson ran for the nomination of the GOP, and he was leading in Iowa, would you consider moving to Israel?
Yes, definitely.
Andrew Koss is a senior editor at Mosaic. We'll talk about what has changed since October 7th in Israel, Gaza, and in the overall American discourse, as well as Gen Z, the Iran war, and the Jewish text that helps Koss find serenity in this dark time.
I mean, the Hebrew Bible is not an easy book anymore to get into, but somewhere in there it tells a story about things going right and everything going wrong, and it ends with the Jews coming back to the land of Israel. I mean, what could be better than that? And their whole world is destroyed. The temple is destroyed, and they all come back. And there are times, like as a religious person, or even as a non-religious person, you have to look around and say, just the things that have happened to the Jewish people. The idea that you'd have this terrible disaster happen to the Jews in the 1940s, and then 3 years later, the Jews come back to their homeland, revive their language, win a war against all these different peoples. And I can understand as a historian why each of these things happened. But when you look at the big picture, I mean, how can you not see that as some degree of the hand of God?
All that and more on today's edition of Public Research. We're going to get into some of your more recent writing, which is about sort of what's going on in the sort of scary atmosphere of America in 2026. But there's a war going on with Iran, so it would seem irresponsible not to discuss. How are America and Israel doing in this operation?
This is the question people keep asking me. And I get up every morning and I wonder the same thing. So I think the place to start is with the kind of brass tacks that Iran took a serious beating. And, we're never going to understand really what happened with the war until it's over, right? And we don't know what's going to happen with the negotiations. It may start again. It may not start again. The U.S. is still sending all this hardware, another aircraft carrier, and all kinds of jets and Marines and other things to the Middle East, so it could be starting again. But the thing to keep in mind that we know is that Iran lost a lot of its material. It lost a lot of its stuff. And Iran with a lot of ballistic missiles is worse than Iran with fewer ballistic missiles. How many it has left, there's some dispute, but it lost a lot of them. It still has lots of smaller missiles also, and it's going to try to build more, but a lot of its capacity to produce those missiles is also gone. They're going to have a hell of a time starting up the nuclear program again. Again, we shouldn't stop worrying about it, and we never know anything for sure, but it's also been set back. And, Iran was able to shoot missiles at all of America's allies, but it caused relatively little damage. It has this advantage of being able to close the Strait of Hormuz rather, but even that has kind of backfired. So it's not like, we didn't start World War III. It hasn't been a quagmire or a disaster. We haven't lost hundreds of lives, or I mean, it's horrible. I think the total now is 13 American soldiers and servicemen and women have lost their lives, which is awful. But it doesn't exactly show Iranian strength. So in that way, the U.S. and Israel have already won. Um, a lot, and the outcomes can be better or worse. A lot can go wrong, but I think that should be the kind of headline that we focus on.
Uh,
Um,
so Ivo Daalder, the former head of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and he's now at
yeah,
Harvard, said this war is worse than the Iraq War. I just listened to Chuck Todd, who I actually sort of like as a person, but I
yeah.
was listening to his podcast last night, and he said this is clearly worse than the Iraq War and as bad as Vietnam, where we lost over 50,000 troops over, a decade of war.
This is in some ways worse than, you know, it's much worse than Iraq, right? I mean, we got a better outcome out of Iraq than we're getting out of this. It's as bad as Vietnam.
So that is becoming the consensus, conventional wisdom that we lost and Iran outplayed us. They planned and we hadn't. And Trump really got showed. Is that wrong?
It's absurd. I mean, again, depending on what happens, even if we get the worst case scenario where Trump backs down and goes to some awful deal that's um, closer to the 2015 Obama deal than we would like, and that we could say that you could interpret it as Iran checkmated us with the Strait of Hormuz. Even if you made that case, I would say, we lost next to nothing in this war, and we totally destroyed their military capabilities. I mean, they lost 90% of their navy. They lost all this stuff. And again, I mean, Vietnam went on for years. Also, we lost the Vietnam War. I mean, whatever people say, right? Let's look at this comparison. Set aside the deaths and everything like that, and the way it sort of undermined American morale, and everything else. The goal of the war was to stop the communists from taking over South Vietnam. In the end, America pulled out, and there is no South Vietnam anymore. That's a clear loss. The goal of this war, it's hard to say exactly, but I think the main goal was to set back Iran's capability of both nuclear weapons and, more importantly, really, the ballistic missiles. And we've done that. So that's the difference between winning and losing. I mean, if you were Iran and you had a choice between fighting this war and not fighting this war, what do you think you would choose?
Yeah, it's a bit alarming how wrong or facile a lot of the commentary on this war has been from former government like, for instance, Amos Hochstein, who was a diplomat who worked for Biden. He was on a show and he said, "This is the greatest energy crisis in world history."
This is the biggest shortage and energy crisis we've had in global history.
And I'm looking down the street at the gas station. I don't see any gas lines. I don't see any fistfights, which was the case in the 70s in America. And this is like our government. The ammo shocks them. The highest level. It's almost scary they could be so wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten so used to this sort of stupidity. I mean, Amos Hochstein is not a dumb guy. He's not a
No,
bad guy. I think
no.
he pulled there was some fierce criticism of the policies that he implemented
Oh, I'm not
under the Biden
attacking.
administration.
I'm not
But
attacking him. Yeah.
that's different, but he knows better. But look, I think we live in a media environment
Yeah.
where everything is becoming more and more like Twitter, which is
Yeah.
the ridiculous website from which we know each other.
Yeah.
Um, and people's memories are very short, and there's a very high priority
Clickbait.
on exaggeration. And just, the more hyperbole that you give, the more people will applaud you. And nobody will correct you. And everyone lives in their own echo chamber. So it's easy to get away with this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there's also an assumption, because people like Donald Trump don't like Donald Trump, often for good reasons, that if he does it, it must be bad. And that's not how logic works.
And we have this entire media ecosystem where these sites have built their audience as, like the Bulwark. And Bulwark does some good stuff. They have a great podcast with Elliot Cohen and Eric Edelman, for instance. But they've sort of built themselves up as anti-Trump. So immediately the war gets interpreted as, let's cast this as Donald Trump's disaster. Donald Trump embarrasses us, is humiliated by Iran. And, I mean, it is crazy that the conventional wisdom is we've lost this war. How many government officials in America has Iran killed during this war?
Exactly.
Zero. How many of their highest level leaders have we killed? 40, hundreds? I mean, we killed the supreme leader. How many steel factories have they bombed in America? Zero. Yet we're the loser. I think it's bizarre. It's really bizarre.
It is bizarre.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre. And, people don't understand the way wars work. They have very little sense of history. And it's just very messed up.
I'm very concerned about a deal. About some deal where, and I gotta say, this is the most pro-Trump I've been in years. I really admire him for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Really admire him for doing it. It's funny to say it, but he is the responsible, long-term thinking politician on the stage right now. Everybody else is saying, "Oh, I would never do this. The politics are bad and stuff." And he's like, "No, they shouldn't get a nuke." I actually meant that. And all these other people are like, "Well, we gave speeches about it, but come on, don't be so absurd to actually do something."
In the lands of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I mean, that's what it really boils down to.
So I'm scared of a deal, really scared of a deal, sanctions relief. And oddly, my take is we've actually gone soft on Iran. And I'll tell you why. Ukraine today attacked a Russian oil depot and a port. Mm-hmm. And they've been doing this regularly. They're in a war with Russia, and they're trying to win. And you go for the jugular, and you attack. That's too much for us. We haven't destroyed Karg Island. We have 80% of that economy right there that we could destroy. We didn't destroy it. We haven't destroyed power plants, ports. My fear is that our concern, which I understand, and I have great sympathy for the Iranian people, and I think it's beautiful the way that Iranians and Israelis have bonded since October 7th. But I think there's an ironic effect. This concern for the Iranian people might leave the regime in a stronger place. And I worry that we're going to come down to a brutal choice of, I don't think this regime is going to fall in the next month or something. I think it will straggle on. So I fear that we're going to have a choice of reading a headline in 8 months that either says Iran imports new radar and jets from China, rushes for nuclear weapon, or reading this headline, Tehran still struggling to repair electrical grid. Iran still reeling from the loss of Karg Island, which would be bad for the Iranian people. But I think this regime will never admit defeat. They're always going to say they won. And we're not doing a ground operation. I think they can always mess with the straits, so trying to stop that is impossible. I think our only choice is to degrade them and make them pathetic. And frankly, it's brutal, it's true. You can't really develop nukes when you're struggling to keep the lights on. What do you think?
I mean, my instincts go in a very similar way as yours. I'm going to give the sort of other side of the argument just to flesh it out. I mean, I don't know what's best. I think on the one hand, and other people understand this better than me. There's a guy whose name I can't remember now at FDD, who had a thread about this. They can't take stuff out of Carg Island now. Carg Island is all the oil basically goes out through Carg Island. What happens is you start getting a sort of backlog of oil, and that messes up the whole system. Again, I don't know much about the petroleum industry. I'm not going to try to explain it. But that oil is stuck because of our blockade on them. So that may effectively put Carg Island out of commission without us firing a shot. But look, you know, I think the concern for Iranian civilians is important, and we want to keep them on our side because they're the ones. If the regime falls, it's not going to be directly because of us or because of Israel. It's going to be because of the Iranians. We don't really have the capacity to overthrow the regime except at enormous costs, and they do, and they're capable of doing it. And they will in the long run. It's just a question of how long a run that is. So we don't want to alienate them or, you know, hurt them, as you pointed out. So that's part of it. But there's another part of it, which is that, look, Trump only has support of half the country. And this is the way our politics works now. It's not like he's George W. Bush, who will get support for the war from a good number of Democrats as well as Republicans. I mean, this is not, no Democrat is going to like what he's doing. And a lot of Republicans aren't thrilled about it. They'll like it because Trump is doing it, but that's about it. So if gas prices start going up in America dramatically, he's going to lose because of that. And, you know, he doesn't want to be the guy who hurt the American economy, for better or for worse. He's not Winston Churchill who's going to tell the people you've got to sacrifice for this. And how are you going to convince Americans that they have to sacrifice for this that's so far away? Ukrainians have very little to lose, and Russia is right next to them, and they are fighting for their lives every day. I mean, even more so than Israel, because there's an actual like Russian army marching into their country, like shooting their homes and kidnapping their children. And they're going to do whatever the hell it takes. And I mean, by the way, we should be helping them 10 or 30 times more than we are, but they're going to do whatever it takes. So it's why the analogy doesn't hold up. But yes, I mean, you're right. If you want to win a war, I mean, you hit everything you've got with as much as you got as quickly as you can. And we're not doing that. But I want to say one more thing about the Russia and China, which is I don't know what their calculation is, but they may be thinking, we invested all this money in Iran, and Iran couldn't keep up its end of the bargain. It got shellacked. Like, why should we keep sending good money after bad? And especially for China, because it flew in China's face. I mean, China is hurting so much more from the blockade and the oil prices than America is, and than America ever will. So that's bad for China. And one of the possible outcomes, which I think is not unlikely, is that China will call up the Iranians and say, if you want any help, like, you better back down right away. Zinab Rabua, who's a very smart analyst at the Hudson Institute, wrote a couple good pieces for Mosaic where she talked about this connection. So yes, I worry about what China's going to send them. I worry about those possible headlines, and I don't have a complete answer to that, but that is how I see the kind of other side of the equation.
Yeah, one thing I worry about is I fear that there's this widespread assumption that Israel and the U.S.'s ability to own the skies over Iran is just going to continue indefinitely. Mm-hmm. And I fear that is actually a window that won't always be true. China has not given Iran these J-10 jets, but they've discussed doing it. That could happen. New radar systems. I mean, one thing I've been shocked by is that we've allowed all these Chinese ships to bring in drone components and God knows what to Iran during the war.
Yeah.
Are you a little shocked that I'm sort of shocked that people aren't screaming about the bypass pipeline. Why? I mean, it's perfect for Trump. He should force the Gulf states to pay for it. It's only 40 billion. They could easily pay for it. It would take away all Iran's leverage. I'm sort of shocked.
Yeah, I don't I know I don't understand the situation well enough and the economics of it all.
Right.
It's just but you don't invest in something like that because of a possibility. You start investing in it once the possibility becomes real.
Right. So I want to move to America, but as we move from Iran back to the U.S., we got to stop in Israel and Gaza briefly.
Yeah.
We talked a few years ago, I think by now.
Yeah.
Who won the Gaza war?
I don't know. It's actually Gaza that I worry about the most of all three fronts. There's Iran, there's Lebanon, and Gaza. I mean, from Israel's perspective, and there's also Iraq and Yemen. But from Israel's perspective, those are the three major fronts, and Gaza is where I worry the most. But what Israel succeeded in doing is getting the hostages out. Many more of the living hostages, I think the majority of the living hostages, of those who were alive on October 8th, most of them came back. It was horrible what they had to live through. And there are those who didn't live, but they came back. And Israel is still in Gaza. And I don't think anybody really thought both those things would happen on October 8th, 2023. And if Hamas is losing Iran, well, Turkey, Qatar may sponsor Hamas, but it will be a quote unquote more moderate Hamas under that sponsorship. But look, Hamas is still there. It's still in control. It's still taxing people. The Board of Peace, I'm very skeptical about. It's been working on rebuilding. It has half the country, and it has the entire population. Right? Hamas controls the entire population. A while ago now, Ron Baratz, an Israeli analyst, very, very smart, wrote a sort of devastating critique of Israel's strategic failures in the war. Some of the things that's happened since, I think, have gone against his argument, but it's worth taking seriously. On the other hand, we had a response by a guy named Shani Moore, also very brilliant.
Brilliant guy, yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. And it's funny because, Baratz is is definitely on the right, and Shani is on the left in the Israeli spectrum. And Baratz ends up fiercely criticizing Israeli strategy, while Shani is kind of defending it. But you should go. I'll find those things. I don't know if you have notes or stuff you can put that in. But reading that back and forth, I think you get a great sense of how to make sense of things.
So tell us, what is he saying are some of those failures?
Well, the way you win a war is you go in guns blazing and you hit the enemy and hit him hard and don't worry about, all these sort of, Ron called it the postmodern military, where you talk about shaping narratives and shaping realities and all this other stuff. And what you actually have to do is win. And Israel's goal was not to reconquer the Gaza Strip, which is probably what it should have been. And with that, I agree. I think Israel should have announced on day one, our plan is to reoccupy every square foot of Gaza. We're not going to make it part of Israel again. We're going to give it back eventually. We're not interested in settlements or expanding Israel's border. But you, Hamas, should know that our plan is to reoccupy the Strip, which means you're going to lose power completely. And I think that would have been a threat that would have really scared Hamas, because Israel is the only entity that can get rid of Hamas and take away its political power. And that's ultimately what you have to do in a war. And that's the thrust of Ron's argument. It's a very sophisticated argument. It's called, the name of the essay is What's Wrong with the Postmodern Military? I just recommend everybody Google it. His last name is Baratz. So if you type those things in Mosaic, you'll find it.
Let me let me ask you. So let me
Yes.
just ask the basic. Why would that be good to own this very troubled territory that will probably get Israeli soldiers killed?
You don't want to own it. Your plan is to give it back. But once your soldiers are occupying every square foot, then Hamas is not in power anymore. Then Hamas is not taxing people. You still have some Hamas guys hiding out and fighting, but then it's no longer a government at all. Then it's just a terrorist group. Then you're back to the 1980s. Again, Israel should not be considering governing it in the long run. It should be working with something like the Board of Peace, some sort of cooperation with its Arab allies for some sort of trusteeship, or even rebuilding a kind of local government from the bottom up. It's already working with these militias that are anti-Hamas. There's all kinds of controversy about this, and some of these are kind of scary guys to begin with, but you grab somebody and put them in charge and say, you're running the show now. That's really the only thing to do to show Hamas that it's not in control anymore. Right now, Hamas is in control. It's only in control of 49% of the Strip, but it's in control.
So let me just play devil's advocate.
Please.
What is can we question maybe the entire goal? I wonder if the goal was wrong from the outset of destroy Hamas, because I think, as some people said, it sort of presumes that Hamas was this alien presence taking the Gazans hostage. And I think we do have to address this question of, if you get rid of Hamas, and is it just going to be another group called Hamas that comes 3 years? How much does Hamas reflect the society? And one stat I think about a lot is the average age in Gaza is 19. And think about how those 19-year-olds were raised. Their graduation ceremonies in third grade, they were killing Jews. I mean, the anti-Semitic, genocidal propaganda from birth. Have you seen Gazans say, man, I really regret October 7th, not on the grounds that it didn't work and now I live in a tent, but that it was wrong? And
no, but that's okay.
Okay.
Because, look, reshaping a society, nobody really knows how to do that. I mean, we have some sense. There was denazification after World War II. But again, it took occupation of half the country by American troops for many years. And there were a lot of Americans, and they were everywhere. But the first step to doing that is for Hamas to lose. So let me make 2 points. And look, I understand your argument. I'm sympathetic with it. I think you're basically right. But there are 2 things to consider. One is that you can defeat an organization. And it's not just, right, people don't get up in the morning and say, I'm going to go kill some Jews. They get up in the morning and kill Jews. I mean, people do that, but they're not very dangerous. An organization with an army and with brigades and battalions and companies and ambulance drivers and medics that is able to carefully plan an operation like October 7th is much more dangerous than a lot of people who hate Jews. I mean, most people in Egypt probably hate Jews too, but they're not a problem. So destroying the structure and the politics is a big thing. It's like what we're talking about with Iran. It's not the best outcome you'd ever want, but it's a lot better than it was before. Secondly, but yes, we should worry about another organization called Hamas coming along and taking over. Absolutely. But secondly, the way you defeat ideas like the idea behind Hamas is through military victory. Let people see that Hamas tried to do this and lost.
Well,
and that it didn't bring glorious victory. It brought shame and devastation. That's how you teach people to think this is a bad idea. I'll go back to an example because it's the example I know well. After World War I, Germany lost a terrible battlefield victory I mean, their army was getting shellacked in the last, I don't know, 4 to 6 months of the war. They were losing everywhere. But Germany was not invaded. Um, Civilians weren't getting enough food, but they weren't getting bombed or anything like that. And it was a horrible experience for civilians, and that's part of the reason they lost. But it led people 10 years later to say, "Hey, we were occupying Russia and Ukraine and Belarus and Lithuania, and now and nobody was occupying us, and then we just lost. It must have been a stab in the back." After World War II, thousands and thousands of German civilians, maybe much more than that, were killed. Millions of German soldiers were killed. Cities were flattened. The country was destroyed. It was torn in half. Half the country was taken over by Stalin, which was, a very, very bad outcome. And after that, no more trouble from Germany.
It's funny. I just had on Daniel Pipes, who wrote a book called Israel Victory.
Yes.
He discussed that exact Germany example. I worry that destroy Hamas is a phantom goal. I mean, we did kill their top 50 people. They're all gone. It's still here. If I could go back, I would say to do very much the opposite. Did you ever see that Eric Weinstein clip of what he was recommending after October 7th?
I don't think so.
Okay. He was saying, and actually it was like 2 weeks after October 7th, so it was very precedent. He said, Hamas wants Israel to bomb it. It wants these visuals of the dead children so it can do this PR war in the West. And he said, deny them that. He said, set up a mathematical, basically, equation. And so my adaptation would have been this. You say to Hamas, every week or 2 weeks or month, you could set the thing. You don't give back the hostages. We're going to take 1% of Gaza. And we're going to do it peacefully, bloodlessly. We're going to formally annex it and dedicate each percent to a victim of October 7th. On TV, we're going to raise a flag in a ceremony, and we're going to deny you these TikTok videos of bombing and aftermath and say, okay, you don't want to give back the hostage? It's great. Okay, we'll just be taking another percent now. And then we'll take another. You decide. You decide how much we're going to take. And and maybe that's not realistic because Biden wouldn't have allowed it. And I think that gets to a core problem here that we're going to talk about, which is Israeli independence. I really don't. I actually do think Israelis should think about solving. I know Dan Shuftan, who has this good line about Americans think everything can be solved, which is true, but I actually think the status quo is not really sustainable, and they should actually think about solving it. But anyways, so that's what I really fear that you look at the Gallup poll about American attitudes towards Israel, and Israel lost so badly on the PR war, I would argue they lost the war. So what do you think about that approach?
I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe it would have been better to do something like that. But first of all, you can't do that bloodlessly. Hamas is going to fight you for every square inch. And they would try to regain the initiative. So you do that, they slaughter a hostage on camera.
Oh, yeah.
And remember also the rockets. They're firing rockets. So, and those rockets are going to kill people. So it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And, they're very good at their job, and it's hard to kind of outsmart them. But again, if I have a choice between winning the PR war and winning the war on the ground, I'll win the war on the ground every time.
I see a lot of rubble, but I'm not sure if it was a victory. But I mean, it's such a tough situation.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
It's such a tough situation. I just love Ireland and Spain judging Israel. It's so funny. The most obsessively anti-Israel country is Ireland, for instance, which is probably the country on earth with the least external threats to itself. Probably, it has nothing to fear, so it can just obsess about this foreign country, which says a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also the ties between the IRA and the PLO and Hezbollah had a lot to do with it.
So let's come to America. First of all, I've been thinking about this where whenever I talk about anti-Semitism, and it's been true for a while, I always want to say to the guests, wow, it's really gotten a lot worse. It's really bad. And it's like almost repetitive. But it's worth saying because it needs to be said. And let me just do a personal note.
Please.
I was talking to my friend, a very close friend of mine's brother yesterday, and I'm also friendly with him. I hadn't spoken to him in a while, and he's telling me this greater Israel stuff. And, well, isn't there a greater Israel, and this sort of conspiracy stuff, and isn't Israel trying to, aren't they in Lebanon because they just want land? And I said, well, what about the Hezbollah rockets? Well, but it's about land, And I see this infection. I really view it as that. And it's like, wow, I would never have thought that person would be doing it. But so on a personal level, I'm increasingly alienated from American culture as a Jew. I'm scared. I'm disturbed. I don't trust it. I don't know what's going on, but it's frightening what is mainstream, what is acceptable. I interviewed Daniel Pipes, who's so smart, but at the end I asked him about this, and he gave me a very calm, totally defensible answer, and he said, this is sort of like the 1930s, Father Coughlin, Lindbergh, and there's the cycles during change. It's very nice, and I tend to be a little alarmist, but it was sort of like, he probably didn't mean it this way, but it sort of gave off an impression to me like, oh, it's okay, this is just a thing, and it'll be all right. And I don't feel that calm about it. I'll just stop there, and I'll say, how do you feel about it, and how much closer do you recommend a great novel called The Passenger to me last time we talked. How much closer do you feel to that character in The Passenger today than when we last spoke?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to do Nazi analogies, but I mean,
of course,
just in the sense of wow, people around me are like becoming things I would never have expected,
Yes, I mean, look, I'm pretty sheltered also. But I haven't had that many friends who I've seen go anti-Semitic, or even like Jewish friends who believe these sort of ridiculous things. But I know it's out there. And I've definitely seen some of this with people I know. Again, not the worst, but some of it. Look, a lot of Americans still like Jews. Israel is still very popular, especially in the red states. Um, Twitter and podcasts is not real life. I just saw a poll that said, Hassan Piker, this anti-Semitic creep who like plays video games on the internet or something, and now is like a political commentator, is the kind of person that I learn about actually because of you, because you pay attention to these people, and I don't. I'm the wrong generation. But most Americans have not heard of Hassan Piker or hadn't heard of him until he got profiled in the New York Times. So that gives you a sense of just proportion. Like there's proportion. But it's very scary, and this is why I'm glad we have Israel, because if things go really bad, that's where we can go to.
Yeah, I've been saying recently, there's this odd thing I've been noticing. Maybe it's wrong, but there's now like 800 million podcasts, right? Everybody has podcasts.
Yes.
There's so many podcasts, interviews. And I almost wonder, it seems like there's less hard questions asked today than in 1998, ironically. And I think that's related because people go on podcasts where they're not going to be asked those tough questions. But it is so aggravating. I've actually done it. I will take credit. I went out and I asked those questions to Omar Bartov, Peter Beinart, and some others. But it is amazing how You just never hear anti-Zionist American Jews asked. So anti-Semitism surging, and you want to make sure that American Jews have no safe haven? Why? That simple, most obvious question. I don't think I've ever heard them asked it. Have you?
No, I mean, you made this point, I think, on Twitter a little while ago about the podcasts. And since then, I've just seen it over and over again. I just think the media in ecosystem just has all the wrong incentives. I mean, when people used to come on, I don't know, Nightline and stuff like that, Ted Koppel, I was never such a big fan. I mean, I didn't really watch too much of any of these shows when they were a big thing. But he had an incentive to have somebody on and say, like, oh, you asked really tough questions of Bill Clinton or whoever, or Senator D'Amato or whoever it was. And now I don't have an incentive to go on your podcast if you're going to be mean to me. And if you have fans and a following, they want to hear people they like. They don't want to hear somebody they don't like. And look, I confess I'm the same way too. I like listening to podcasts.
Not being mean to you. That's not what we need. We need tough questions to be asked to people.
And look, Peter Beinart, the one thing I'll say about him is I don't think he shies away from being asked tough questions. I think his answers are all wrong and he's asking the wrong questions of himself. But, he's somebody who enjoys, I think, the argument and the spirit of the argument.
I'm going to ask you a very broad question. Just pretend I've been in a coma since we last talked. I wake up from it and I say to you, okay, so what's going on? Tell me about what's the landscape of American politics, political commentary, media. What is it good? Is it bad? How would you answer me?
It's just the same as it was, but worse. Everything has gotten worse, right? And I recommend you go to your doctor and say, please put me back in the coma. I mean, look, we have very good publications out there, who are doing really interesting things. I mean, I'll again make a plug for Mosaic, but Commentary Magazine is great. I keep seeing really interesting things in Quillette, and the Free Press is another great publication. But you have so much stupidness and so much catering to social media, so many people writing about things that they just have no idea about. And now I think, and this is not the direction I think you thought I would head in, but the problem with Substack is that you have AI, which can now write things for people, and you have Substack. And you now have a million people who want to have their own Substacks. They can have AI write their stupid Substacks for them. There are no editors. There's no control. And there's no way to filter it. I'm now subscribed to like 6 different Substacks and there's so many else that I want. And all my friends all have Substacks. I don't know. What do you think about this?
No, but let's be brutal in a sense. And I hate to say this because I wish it wasn't true. And it is true. Writers still matter the most. And if anybody doubts that, look at the book Abundance by Ezra Klein and the way that one book has totally reshaped the way. And you hear it in every Democratic primary. They're echoing that book on zoning and stuff. So writers still matter. Don't get me wrong. But I'll just be brutal and I'll say this. Okay, most people don't read that much anymore. So let's talk about the mass culture. Here are the podcasts in America. Let's look at the top ones. Oh my God, it's worse than I thought. Joe Rogan, number 1. I mean, these rankings are a little suspect, but Crime Junkie, never heard of that. The Daily, the New York Times. This past weekend, Theo Von, The Sean Ryan Show. I'm going to play a clip from that. And then
I've never even heard of him.
Oh, well, you're about to hear him because I'm going to play you a clip in a second. Then there's Megyn Kelly's show, Candace Owens' show, and then you get down to like, it's shocking, it's horrifying. It's very high up. Is that Daryl Cooper guy? Mm-hmm. What's his persona? Martyr Made.
Yeah. So
his podcast is, I mean, I did a calculation. I called him Team Nazi, of like how much of the top media is I would classify as team anti-Semite or whatever. It is very alarming. As it's gotten worse, it's become so scary. I don't even go on my way to monitor. I can't even listen to Megyn Kelly's voice since she like made this very ugly Tucker turn. Does that scare you when you look at that?
Yes. Absolutely. It's terrifying. I mean, I can console myself by saying that, even the most popular of these, not many people listen to them. I mean, it's not like, NBC News at its height where everybody was sort of sitting down at dinner or after dinner and turning on their TVs. But yes, it's terrifying. And I think the problems are that people, A, know nothing. And B, I think this gets back to the article I wrote for the Israeli publication Hashiloach. I think there's a real lack of appreciation of America and patriotism. And I think people are just inclined to hear like the worst crap about America. And the stuff that used to be sort of left-wing nutcases were saying, now it's the right-wing nutcases are saying it too.
Yeah, let's get into your piece. Why don't you lay out the core argument of it?
Sure. So just to give some background, I wrote this piece for an Israeli publication called Hashiloach, which is a very serious Hebrew language journal that has sort of what we would call long form pieces. It's a print journal. It has a website. Some of their stuff appears on the website in English. So it's something you can check out. It's a great publication. So I basically started with a offhand conversation with somebody, but they ended up asking me after the Tucker Carlson, Daryl Cooper podcast, which I think sort of brought this problem to everybody's attention. Like, what the hell is happening with the American right? Was the question.
Let me tell the audience, just in case they don't know, how disgusting that episode was.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, it's almost worse than Holocaust denial. Because Daryl Cooper in that episode literally says
they put themselves into a position. They launched a war where they were unprepared, and they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there. And they're writing back to Berlin saying, we can't feed these people. Rather than wait for them all to slowly starve, wouldn't it be more humane to just finish them off quickly now?
The Germans killed the Jews because they cared so much about the Jews, which sounds crazy, but he literally says, well, we have these letters the Germans were writing back to Berlin of, oh, we can't feed these people. I mean, it would be more merciful to, what, are we going to let them starve? Well, I guess we're going to have to put them in a ditch and kill them, basically is what he's saying, because it's totally vile, and then Tucker says, this is the greatest historian, my favorite historian, but yeah, anyways, continue.
So I tried to explain to an Israeli audience why this is happening. So of course it's my own analysis. I should say I wrote this piece in English and they translated it for me. They did a great job. The Hebrew title they gave it is a quote I used from Ruth Weiss, who's the scholar of Yiddish literature and the best analyst of anti-Semitism today, which is the organization of politics against the Jews. That's her definition of anti-Semitism. It's a line I used, and that's the title they gave it in Hebrew. But I sent you the original English, which will one day be published in some form or another in English. I don't know when, and it's really their piece now. But my argument is that, or part of my argument is that the core of this, there's a kind of anti-Americanism that spans the radical left and the radical right. And the difference between Tucker Carlson and Noam Chomsky just isn't that big anymore. But also that this is a kind of political strategy. If you blame the Jews for your problems, Jews are a very small part of any political coalition. Most coalitions can afford to lose the Jews, except for in a few districts. Look, a lot of these right-wing nut jobs are like disgustingly racist against blacks. There's all this racism I've discovered on Twitter against South Asians, just in the most sort of disgusting, vile forms of racism. But the fact of the matter is, Black people voted for Trump in shockingly in unprecedented numbers for Blacks voting for Republicans.
Yeah, for Trump's vote total in the city of Chicago, he got double the number of votes in the last election. Yeah,
exactly. And if you're gonna choose the people to pick on, you want to pick on the people who are numerically smallest, and the Jews are good for that. I mean, I don't know, there are probably fewer Albanian Americans than there are Jewish Americans, but nobody cares about the Albanians. But you have this whole structure of hating Jews that's out there. And you tie it to this sort of idea that everything we've done is wrong, right? The ultimate argument that Cooper and Carlson are making, which is an argument that Chomsky has played with too. And Chomsky defended David Irving, the Holocaust denier, and stuff like that, is that America, that World War II was not the good war, that was the bad war also. I mean, Cooper would go so far as to say that, we shouldn't have fought the Nazis.
He wishes the Nazis won. He says that, yeah.
Yes. I mean, Chomsky would never say that. But, and the left supports the Soviets in that war. But, it's where America stops being the good guy. And so this is all a narrative about America being the bad guy. And look at the Iranian narrative. People think Iran and Arabs in general hate Israel because of America, but it's the other way around. America is the great Satan, and Israel is the little Satan. And I think for Carlson, I mean, he is an ideal of America and says he's a patriot, but he believes that, I mean, to give him more credit for consistency that's due, America's presence on the world stage just brings evil and suffering. That's his argument. And look, it's very bad. And it's very scary.
Right. So I agree with most of the piece, but I do sort of, when I think about the problems, I just don't think about Noam Chomsky. I mean, let me just ask this, because I'm pretty sure you're doing me. You don't think, when you said, well, he said he wouldn't say that it would be good if the Nazis won. I'm pretty sure he didn't want the Nazis to win, right?
Chomsky knows the Nazis are bad.
Yeah.
But for him, the good guys are the Soviets.
Yeah.
Right? So for the left, you have to be on the side of the Soviets, who incidentally made a pact with the Nazis for 2 years and started World War II that way. But he doesn't think Americans are the good guys. And since I've seen my whole life almost, there's this sort of line that, America wasn't so pure, we committed war crimes, that, maybe, we provoked the Japanese, all this other stuff that's always been there on the extremes below the surface. Tucker doesn't have to say that Nazis are bad. I mean, Martyr Maid, Darrell Cooper is basically a neo-Nazi. He would probably deny that. But, that's where his sympathies lie. And that's what happened with David Irving, too.
There was in like 2007 or something, Noam Chomsky and this guy, David Barsimian or something, he's a radio host, they put out these audiobooks. They were just conversations between them. I think one was called like We Want It All, and one was called Power and something. And they were just conversations. I found it enjoyable to listen to. He would talk about all this stuff I didn't know. And then, so I would challenge you and say this, like, take the Chomsky famous William F. Buckley firing line. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where Buckley says, "Good, because I'd smash you in the goddamn face." I remember that kind of.
Yeah.
Sure. It really does. I mean, I think that this is the kind of issue where sometimes I lose my temper. Maybe not tonight.
Maybe not tonight. Because if you would, I'd smash you in the goddamn face. When you say
clip, but yeah, if you take those Chomsky clips and then compare it to Tucker. I see what you're saying, that Tucker's taken on this, I'm this anti-war, anti-American imperialism facade, but the core of what makes him so dangerous, which is this obsessive, basically he's just attacking Jews and Israel just obsessively it's just, he sounds like a Stormfront user, like his email.
Yeah. Oh, he's an anti-Semite. I mean, in a very clear way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't see that in, like, you take an average Chomsky interview from like 1996. I see what you're saying, that they've sort of, but I don't think that's the core of, I think that's like his little flavoring. I don't think that's the core of what brought him to that view. Or do you disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what brought him to that view. I mean, I think Carlson was going towards anti-Semitism for a while. And I mentioned this in the article, and I think I first dinged him in Mosaic, I think it was in 2019, where he did this really creepy thing about the Paul Singer Foundation. And, you know, it was just bad economics.
Cabela's?
It was left-wing economics, in this sort of anti-capitalist kind of economics, and this sort of Jewish businessman coming in, and it, you know, and these ordinary Americans.
Sydney, Nebraska. So, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, so I think he may just have always not liked Jews, and it's come out. I don't really know. And to some extent, I don't really care.
But is Chomsky the root of this, really?
No, it's a convergence. It's a convergence. Yeah. But hating Israel is very important, not to Chomsky per se, but also to Chomsky per se. And look, he has some real psychological issues about being Jewish that I'm not going to try to analyze him, but I wouldn't know. But yeah, for sure.
Like, what has he said something?
I mean, just the fact that he's so obsessed with hating Israel, and his father was this sort of kooky linguist. I mean, Noam Chomsky is also a very brilliant linguist. Who is also a Hebraist, who thought all the languages of the world are related and they all stem from Hebrew.
That reminds me of George Soros's father. You know about his father, right?
Was an Esperanto guy, right?
Esperanto, which is totally forgotten, which was attempted global. It's funny. George Soros's real name is Georgie Schwartz.
Yeah.
They change it to Soros.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, this is a kind of Jewish universalism, right? Esperanto was founded by a guy named Ludwig or Laser Zamenhof, who was from Bialystok. I was actually visited his grave in the Jewish cemetery at Warsaw. And he was sympathetic to Zionism too, but there's this old joke that at the Esperanto conferences, which they used to have and maybe still have, and everybody's speaking Esperanto, and then afterwards everyone goes to the bar and relax, and what language do they speak? Yiddish. But so it's the kind of universalism that only appeals to Jews. But anyways, I don't know Chomsky. Yeah.
What have been the biggest drivers of the rise in anti-Semitism since October 6th, let's say?
I think all the focus on Israel in the media. I think that is number one. And all the bad, misleading, specious, mendacious reporting. I'm sure I missed some thesaurus adjectives there, but I think it deserves all of them. And the way it sort of twisted around the whole story and left people who know like nothing about what's going on. Then I think that combines with the rise of the anti-Semitic right, which was already coming, combined with the anti-Semitic left. And then I think there's the whole thing of social media and the breakdown of norms, and the breakdown of gatekeepers. I mean, it used to be to get this far right stuff, you had to like subscribe to the Ron Paul mailing list, or there were these weird like newspapers that somebody made in their basement that had these like crazy right-wing conspiracy theories about black helicopters and everything like that. But you had to like find them, that people would leave them around in like weird niche places, you know, gun clubs and stuff like that. And most people there would ignore them anyways. So now you just log on and you can find out about this stuff from Joe Rogan. And I think also that leads us to something I didn't discuss in the article, but the sort of crossing of streams between entertainment and news. Where, I mean, look at all these comedians. I think we have a comedian problem. Joe Rogan used to be a comedian. I've never heard him be funny.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Tim Dillon. I don't even really know who he is. Theo Von. I had never heard of Theo Von until you started reporting on his anti-Semitism. Again, I don't know if he's ever been funny. That Dave Smith creep.
He's never been funny as far as I've ever seen. But yeah, he says he's a comedian.
Yeah. And then there's Bassem Youssef, the alleged Egyptian. I think he's Egyptian comedian.
Yeah. The Jon Stewart brought in.
Yeah, and it all started with Jon Stewart. I mean, compared to these guys, Jon Stewart is a saint.
Oh,
but I think he's very smart. He's very funny when he's given the opportunity. But I think he should get some blame for all this, of sort of crossing the streams between comedy and reporting. And they used to do this thing the way, I don't know who came up with the phrase, but conservative critics of Jon Stewart, this is like in the early 2000s, had this phrase, clown nose on, clown nose off. So he'd take off the clown nose and say something very sincere. And then he'd put it back on and say these goofy things. And then when you say, like, what about this and then the other thing, you say, I'm just joking around. I'm a comedian.
Yeah, I would say if you go back and look at those Daily Show clips, they're very well written. I mean, the staff was very smart. I mean, if you look at, and I disagree with John Oliver a lot, but like, look at a John Oliver piece. It's actually extraordinary, well researched. I mean, I'm just saying, like, compared to this Theo Von stuff, it's like Harvard versus like a guy shouting on a corner. Yes,
for sure. For sure. And I think some of these people are evil. I certainly don't think Jon Stewart is evil.
So one thing you're getting at, one thing that's amazing, is there's been a huge change in the world in the last 5 years. Huge. And it's almost not discussed or written about, which is the end of big tech content moderation. Yeah. Now, obviously, they still get, if people are defecating in videos or beheadings or porn, they'll get rid of that on YouTube, of course. But there used to be consequences to just saying, like, Jews kill babies for matzah. People used to get kicked off platforms. There used to be, like, hate or terms of service. And it was because of Musk's Twitter takeover and Trump coming back. But basically, they've all stopped, YouTube and stuff. And then you add in, and this is what really supercharges it, when you're monetizing the hateful lies, like the Candace Owens stuff, Israel killed Charlie Kirk and blah, blah, blah. That now you're incentivizing it. And so, of course, you're going to get more and more of it. And it's sort of crazy. We just don't talk about that. The system is literally designed for this stuff.
Yeah. Look, I mean, people understand this much better than I do. I have somebody who's working on a piece for me right now about this that I hope publish sometime in the next few months. But I will just say something from my own experience, that so much of the content I see on X now, and I don't do YouTube really. I certainly don't do Instagram or Facebook or any of those things. But so much of what I see is people retweeting and criticizing this absolute filth. And when they do that, I mean, sometimes it's worthwhile to, like, engage the argument, but you have an incentive to do that, to build your own following. So you quote tweet something. So, like, you're sending it to all your followers, and on top of it, you're making your own comments. And it's great criticism. These are I only follow people, for the most part, that I think are very smart and interesting. But you're just giving this person more attention and probably helping them monetize. And that's, again, this sort of cascade of perverse incentives. So what I do, I never respond to this stuff. I never retweet it. I report it. And they've changed the reporting so that things that you used to be able to report, like sheer like hate or something like that, you can't do that anymore. Yeah, look.
I mean, I literally, I forget that there are any rules. Like, I realized once, there are, like, you can report things. I'm like, oh, that's a thing? You know, I will never retweet a Tucker Carlson account thing. I try to take the video, screenshots of it.
Yeah.
Let's get into the horrible state of affairs. And so one thing I want to ask you is, I wish we had better metrics on anti-Semitism that we could like actually put numbers to it. And I've thought a lot about, is it even possible? And some people say it isn't. But my metric is the things that would have been sort of scandals like 8 years ago that aren't even reported on anymore. And so, like, one example I've been giving is, like, Theo Von just went on this, like, anti-Semitic rant on the Rogan show probably last summer or something. Was not even reported. Like, just not reported. You know, Stephen A. Smith is promoting Candace Owens, while she's doing the blood libel. Not reported. And so I'll give you another thing that was not reported on. Oh, and another example, which is really sad and shocking, but really says a lot, is, do you know the filmmaker Alex Gibney by any chance? Documentarian?
I've heard of him, but I have no idea who he is.
Enron, the smartest guys in the room, Going Clear, the Scientology documentary. He's a great documentarian who's won Oscars, very famous, very well respected. He's now in business with Tucker Carlson. He appeared on the Tucker Carlson show, and he produced the Bibi Files, this film about Netanyahu, and he licensed that to Tucker Carlson Network.
Alex Gibney, thank you very much for doing this.
I think that post 10/7, he then launched an attack on Gaza, which was so beyond any sense of proportionality. Of course, now we have an Iran war and a Lebanon war and so forth and so on, by which the corruption got greater and greater and greater until it became a moral corruption in which the world is now engulfed.
There's something very strange about the ability of Hamas coming across the border. Like, what is this? And it's almost forbidden to say that, as you know, in the United States.
I think there was a lot of talk about what advance warning Netanyahu may have had.
Okay, so it's not just crazy people on the internet who think Netanyahu knew this was coming. Is that a fair statement? But then this war begins in Gaza, this mass murder in Gaza, and then it expands to a lot of the regions in the Levant and now into Iran.
I think is a cynical ploy by Netanyahu to wage war across the Levant and expand Israel's power and influence.
There are reports of mass rapes of Palestinians by settlers in the West Bank.
I mean, it goes on day after day after day after day. I'm glad TCN is showing BB Files on its network.
Thank you very much, Alex Gibney.
Thank you, Tucker.
So he's working with this hate monger, and he's a guy who's like, I'm left wing, I'm blah blah blah. Anybody condemning that in Hollywood? Anybody on the left saying, why are you doing that? No. Anybody condemning Tommy Vitor? I don't know if you've seen, but the Pod Save America guys just can't stop gushing about Tucker Carlson.
Tucker was kind of smoking that out. If more journalists would do what Tucker did, then Tucker's interview wouldn't be such a bombshell.
I'm a Tucker fan now.
Okay,
are you a Tucker fan now too? I reached out to Tucker Carlson to see if he would talk to me about this set of issues. He texted me back. He called me within like a minute of me texting him. But I came away from that conversation feeling like he is very sincerely worried about what's happening with this war.
No pushback on that. And let me give you a scary example. And so I told you one of the top podcasts in America is called The Sean Ryan Show. I'm going to play you a clip from that. It's very disturbing, so I apologize to subject you to this. It's going to be hard for me to watch, but I think we have to do this. All right, here we go. And by the way, I'm pretty sure that his actually underlying claim is not true, by the way, just for the audience, but I'll play it.
Goyim, Goy. Do you know what this is?
What does it mean? It's a
nation cattle.
It's a slur.
It's a racial slur to everybody that's not Jewish. This is in these files. Epstein's talking to the former prime minister of Israel. What is that? What's going on? And then we see all these laws being passed here in the States for anti-Semitism. Aren't we protecting the rest of us?
Are there cases of anti-Semitism in America? Yes, there are.
Yeah, there are.
I'm
not going to argue that.
And have there been incidents? Yes. But is there an arrogance in Silicon Valley beyond just these emails of some people who think they're better than other human beings? That, to me, is the fundamental construct that needs to be challenged. You're not better just because you may be rich. You're not better just because you're part of the Epstein network.
Let's say
Okay. I don't even know where to start.
Well, can I start with something?
Yes.
Which is just to correct the record again. I'm going back to what I know. So obviously the word goy is the Hebrew word for nation. In the Bible, it's used all the time to mean nation. It's where we get the word Gentile, which also comes from the Latin word for nation. It is slang for somebody not Jewish. Is it derogatory? Maybe, maybe not. It has nothing to do with cattle. That's totally made up. It's not necessarily derogatory, certainly in literary uses. I have no idea if it's really in the Epstein files. But
he was not religious, by the way. Yeah.
Of course not. Yeah, of course not. But who's the other creep he's interviewing?
So that's Okay, yeah, I need to explain. That his guest on the Sean Ryan show, making his second appearance, was Ro Khanna, who's a Democrat.
Who totally,
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. He just totally buys into it. He sort of softens it a little bit, but it's these people, the Jews, he's not going to say the Jews, think they're superior to everyone.
Yeah, he's sitting there nodding along as this guy who's a disgusting anti-Semite, one of the biggest podcasters, says, basically, what is he suggesting? Epstein, this is some Jewish plot, and he molested non-Jewish children because the Jews, view us as cattle. It's like David Duke is like the nastiest. Yeah. And Ro Khanna's just sitting there nodding along. And then, he whitewashes it and says, basically what Ro Khanna is sort of saying is, I'm not going to say the word Jew, but these people think they're better than, so this is a Democrat from liberal California. So one thing I did when that came out was, what I do is I go to Blue Sky because I follow all these accounts that say they're anti-Nazi, anti-fascist, and so I scroll my feed, see if anybody's talking about this, anybody condemning this. No mention, no Jacobin article. There's no article. It's not reported. There's no condemnation. Ro Khanna appeared. I'll play you another clip. He appeared in a video with a neo-Nazi named Ian Carroll. Yeah, sorry. I'm just going to depress you so much. Okay, so here we go.
Ian Carroll is one of the internet's top conspiracy analysts. His critics label him an anti-Semite, spreading false information about Israel, but to others he is a fearless journalist that speaks on what some perceive as an extremely strong Zionist pressure on our government. Here's what he had to say.
There are 100 U.S. senators. 100 U.S. senators are in interest in order to operate our government on behalf of someone else. And they all work here, in this building.
This is Representative Ro Khanna from California, and he does not take AIPAC money, according to the website Track AIPAC.
You know what he does? A lot of insider trading. He's made so much money with doing the most insider trades. So he appears in a video. He posted this on his account. He doesn't take it down. Is anybody condemning it? Is there any statements from any? But no, nobody cares. It's all fine. That is really scary. Very scary to me. And Ro Khanna is sort of, there's this wing of the left where it's the Pod Save America guys, and they're sort of like, let's collaborate with Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they're praising Tucker just to shocking degrees. And it's like, it's shocking, but I started seeing this. Have you seen this clip of Majority Report?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Do you know Majority Report?
I can't remember what it is anymore. So
yeah, and I'm sorry it talks so much.
Yeah.
By the way,
No, please. I'm learning a lot.
So,
yeah.
Majority Report is one of the biggest left-wing YouTube channels. It's very large, and it was created by this guy named Sam Cedar, but he has this co-host named Emma Vigeland and this producer named Matt Leck. And
those are creeps, right? Sam Cedar and Emma Vigeland are big creeps. Okay.
Well, Cedar a little bit less, but he's creepy for hiring them. But so, you know, it's funny. My view on the left just got so much dark after October 7th. I was like they're concerned about the thing, and then it just got darker and darker. But I always assumed they're not anti-Semites. No way. And then I started noticing that their thumbnails, I would notice anytime anybody on the right would attack Tucker or Candace Owens for their anti-Semitism, Majority Report would have thumbnails attacking those people, attacking Eric Kirk, attacking Dan Bongino, but never any attacking Tucker or Candace Owens or any of these anti-Semites when they became anti-Israel. And so I called into their show, and this was sort of amazing. So I called in because I was suspecting something. So I asked them,
what's on your mind?
If you had to pick between the Shapiro faction or the Tucker Candace faction taking over the GOP, which would you pick?
If I had to pick, oh gosh,
it's not really much to recommend one over the other, honestly.
Right. I mean, I don't know. The Ben Shapiro faction is the continuation of the genocide in Gaza, but the Candace and Tucker faction, I don't think is earnestly interested in stopping that except to exploit it for anti-Semitic gains
We'll
and
see
views.
what new Tucker has to say about this killing of this woman.
Yeah.
He was really down to do a lot of content about how George Floyd wasn't actually murdered by the cop that we all saw murder him. So yeah, I hope they do.
If you had to pick,
Okay, but let me just I appreciate the question. I see what you're saying.
What would you say? How about that?
Okay, well, let me just you can say who you would pick in a second, but I don't think it's the right, like, the Candace Owens and the Ben Shapiro faction you're talking about, they were the same thing like 2 years ago before she got kicked out of Turning Point USA.
The point is just like that we should not overstate the differences between.
She's just a liar and careerist, and so she just tells me, "Oh, they're the same. There's no difference." But the producer is a real true believer, as you'll see, and he actually answers honestly. So listen to
these factions. It's being overstated because the feud right now is a media feud that also involves like the money and infrastructure of TPUSA and the future of the Republican project as it relates to the midterms and electoralism. So I think that the ideological differences are like immensely overstated because I don't believe in the sincerity of them.
Am I still there?
Yeah.
Who would you pick was Matt's question.
To me, I would say there's differences. I saw Candace said the Jews did the slave trade. I mean, she's recommending all these like Nazi books. I mean, it seems pretty.
She's doing Holocaust denialism, and Ben Shapiro is currently doing
denying the
Holocaust denialism in Gaza.
Here's an easier question to answer than which one I would support is, do I want to see Zionism expelled from all political ideologies on the right and left? Yes. I want to see them lose.
So Matt, you prefer Tucker take over?
I want to see Zionism lose any subscribers in this country. Yes. So if you want to reduce that to Tucker wins the Republicans, like, I guess reduce it that way.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the answer.
Okay.
I think it's actually an important thing, and I defer to people like Ilan Pape and Avi Shlaim, that it's one thing for the people on the liberal side of the ledger here to lose support for Israel, and it's very good and welcome. But the key pillar right now is on the right, and I want that pillar to collapse.
What should we?
Thanks, sir.
So yeah, he wants the Nazi takeover of the Democratic Party. Again, of course, that wasn't any news. That wasn't reported. It gets this bigger thing about, I want to pivot about Gen Z, which they frighten me. The Gen Z left uses the term Zog. That used to be a neo-Nazi. I mean, it was created by neo-Nazis. That's the left of Gen Z.
Yes.
This is like we're a left-wing show. Yeah, we would prefer if David Duke took over the GOP because he is anti-Israel. I mean, thoughts?
Who's David Duke's favorite congressperson?
Oh, was it Cynthia McKinney? It was Tulsi?
Ilhan Omar. So, I mean, look, anti-Semitism is this great unifier. It can join people together. And that's what it's doing here. I mean, it's not surprising. And look, this is where talking about the distinction between hating Israel and hating Jews becomes increasingly just meaningless. It's not like there's no distinction. It's just that, like, look, I'm sure if Emma Vigeland had to sit next to a Jewish person on a train, she wouldn't wish they were dead. But she might be wondering if, that guy's wearing a yarmulke, he probably supports genocide. So, where does that put you? No, and then it's a kind of anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, right? That's to pay all this attention to Israel, right? Of all the different things that America has going on, why is Israel that important? We were giving money to Iran that basically propping up the government in Syria while it was for real slaughtering tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And our money was supporting that because of the Iran deal. And none of these self-righteous jerks were upset about that. So the fact that our money is going to Israel, so what? And even the idea that Israel is committing genocide, you have to be some sort of wacko to believe it because it doesn't fit with the actual things that are happening. So, and then the whole thing with money from AIPAC. AIPAC is an American organization. It was not founded as a political action committee. It only in the last couple of years with the anti-Israel surge did it found a political action committee. So it's not giving money to campaigns. That's not what it does. And now, I mean, to me, the Graham Plattner, this guy in Maine, the fact to me that proves he's an anti-Semite is that he keeps tweeting about AIPAC. I don't care about his tattoo. I don't really care if you like Jews or don't like Jews. I mean, I care on a personal level, but it's being obsessed with the problems of the Jews. It's the organization of politics against the Jews, right? I can never remember who first said the quip that the definition of anti-Semitism is hating Jews more than absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
And that when you're hating Israel more than absolutely necessary, it becomes the same thing.
The effect of having Israel front and center for 3 years has been, I always knew was going to be very dangerous. But one effect is, when's the last time you heard someone on the left talk about defund the police?
It's been a while. But people like police.
Yeah, no. Yeah. It was a crazy idea. But these people like Emma Vigeland stuff, that they used to talk about that. I haven't heard them talk about that in years.
Because it's easy to hate Israel. And you can bring in people from the left and from the right. You can form these political alliances. You can't do that with defund the police. And look, defund the police is a political loser.
Oh, no, of course. But
in a way that AIPAC is the source of all your problems is a winner.
Well, but I don't even hear them talk about healthcare. I mean, there were 14. Harvard says there were over 14,000 anti-Israel protests in America, or it might have been globally after October 7th. When's the last time you saw a protest about getting universal health care? Ever?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't talk about the core of the young left is they're just all they care about is their hatred of Israel. So we got to talk about what I call Gen N, which is commonly referred to as Gen Z, but I call them Gen N, Generation Nazi. And sorry to play the disturbing clips. I'm not really cheering you up. Have you seen this?
No.
So this is from like Omegle or something like that. And I'll just play this here.
Oh, wow.
Oh, sorry. What is...
Oh,
bro.
So Omegle is, there are like these sites where like you go on, you turn on your webcam, and then it randomly matches you with another person. So it's like,
okay,
it's a way that people can like, it's like a fun sort of game. So it's like someone from Brazil will show up. But people also use it to do, like, some creeps would do it to do nudity, and there's all sorts of ways people use it. And this guy in the Kippah is named Joseph Cohen. He's from England. He moved to Israel. He runs an account called Israel Advocacy Movement. And so he has these, like, encounters on there, and he posts them online. So this is an encounter he had recently.
Oh, wow. Bro, I watched a video of a guy like you in Gaza. Yeah. Catboy, that's me.
Okay, so did you see that, Andrew?
Yes, I saw that.
So the guy holds up a happy merchant meme, which is this Nazi meme of Jew, anti-Semitic meme. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Gaza. Yeah. Catboy, that's me.
Oh, money.
Let's talk.
All right, sorry. I have to get my bit done. What do you want to talk about?
How do you think you would be received by Hamas?
Oh, they welcome me with open arms. We share the same ideals.
What ideals?
I don't believe
He's
that
right.
Israel has the right to exist.
Are you on the political right or political left?
What do you think, my friend?
I mean, you look like you're on the left.
Correct. I'm the furthest left person I know. I'm a fan of socialism and even communism.
So you believe all people are created equal. No people should be oppressing on other people. We shouldn't be discriminating. We shouldn't be racist.
I don't hate Jews. I do not hate Jews.
That picture you held up is a picture of a Jew, not of a Zionist.
Do you believe Jewish people look like that? That's something on your end, my brother.
So you believe Zionists look like that?
Yeah, I hate Zionists. I think Zionists should be all lined up and,
So you want to kill these Zionist people? Yeah, you want to kill all the Zionists.
I don't want to kill them personally.
You want someone else to do it. You haven't got the courage to do it. But...
I wouldn't mind if all Zionists vanished from the face of the earth.
Okay, so can I ask what a Zionist is?
Okay, so Andrew, if you told me that in 8 years, somebody, and he has these like Catboy headphones, so he's like probably LGBTQ, I assume. So he would I think he would probably describe himself as a far left LGBTQ person. If you told me 8 years ago that person would be walking around with a neo-Nazi meme at the ready on their phone and do it in this anti-Semitic more money thing with the hands, and then would be like, oh yeah, I'm on the left, I would not have believed you. I wouldn't have believed you that these people would start using Zog in Nazi terms like that. That's Gen Z. That guy is Gen Z. So let's just get into Gen N. How disturbed are you by Gen Z?
What defines somebody as Gen Z? I always get confused. Like, when do you have to...
Gen Z is people born after 1997.
Okay. So, I think, look, there are two things to say. First of all, I'm surprised by this. Like, I'm not surprised by it now, but I would have been surprised 8 years ago, but much less surprised than you would have been, because, I've been following, certainly Mosaic has been reporting on the right wing and on the left wing anti-Semitism, like people and the college campuses. Ruth Weiss wrote a piece for us, Israel Goes to School. This was in like 2015. And like what's happening now on campuses doesn't surprise me at all. It's that I'm surprised that other people are surprised. And this was true it started during the first Intifada. It didn't start then, but it was very clear. No, sorry, the second Intifada, when I was in college. So it's become a lot worse, but it's the same thing. On the other hand, look, most Gen Z kids are not doing this. Most of them are worried about like getting jobs or like hanging out with their friends or who's going to go out with them and stuff like that, like normal things. and most of them aren't political at all. So that's, I mean, you can dismiss that as cope, and maybe you're right, but you see, I know the lingo also. But I mean, I imagine most people are not on Omegle. Is that what it's called?
Omegle, I think, yeah. But you've seen the data. They are the most, I think they're the most anti-Semitic generation, are young people in America.
That doesn't surprise me. But again, look, they see the podcasts. It's coming at them from the left and the right. They see the social media stuff that exposes it to them. And they have no faith in America, right? They were raised to think that America is bad. And that makes it easier to think that Israel is bad, right? Because if you believe in this crazy conspiracy theory that Israel is occupying America and pulling its strings, which it's, you know, every day Tommy Vitor and Ben Rhodes are moving closer and closer to that conclusion. And the idea that, you know, that's the only explanation to explain why America supports Israel. Well, if you thought America was a great place that made good decisions and you had faith in the American people, you wouldn't think it was controlled by some foreign country because you would like the stuff it's doing. So I think it's the education system is a huge part of that. I mean, you know, when uneducated people could be anti-Semites too, but historically, it's often been the educated people who are the worst.
Let me push back on something you said. You said that it's sort of the same thing as you saw in the early 2000s with the anti-Israel on campus. But that was Israel's killing civilians, human rights. You know, we're the left and we care about human rights. This is I'm using neo-Nazi memes, and that is to me like another category of horrible.
Yes. But once you get on the train, it's inevitable that some people are going to stay on until they hit the neo-Nazi station. And again, I think the line between hating Israel and hating Jews is so slippery that it's where you're going to end up eventually.
You do sound sort of calm about Gen Z, and I think I look at myself. I tend to be a pessimist and sort of try to think about avoiding the worst. I'm not calm about it. Should I be calm about it?
No, don't be calm. You should be worried. But I think that you know, I think spending a lot of time online makes you worried. I see Gen Z kids, younger Gen Z kids, when I go to pick up my daughter from school, and most of these kids, again, they don't give two craps about politics or Israel or anything like that. They care about their clothes and you know, where they're going to college and just sort of normal stuff. So that's part of it. But yes, you should be worried. Okay. But I'm also calm precisely because I'm pessimistic. Because I mean, certainly from a kind of religious perspective in a way, and the religious historical perspective, you know, it was Passover 3 weeks ago when we all say in every generation they rise up against us to destroy us. So, you know, it's to be expected that this is going to happen from time to time, and maybe this is similar to what Dan Pipes told you.
I got panic you.
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to try to ruin your serenity. So, and let me just say, I want your feedback. One of my theories about what's going on with the Gen Z anti-Semitism surge is as the country gets more diverse, we now are having this new phenomenon of this diverse kind of far right, where there's Muslims and some non-white people. And so how is that going to work? Because obviously if there's some brown faces doing the brown people suck lecture, there's going to be some issues. So what can they all agree on? We hate the Jews. That's
exactly
one factor I see. And actually, it's very interesting. Some of the most disgusting anti-Semites, pro-Hitler, are non-white, Myron Gaines, people like that. So that's one thing. But let me ask you a question. If in 2032 Tucker Carlson ran for the nomination of the GOP, and he was leading in Iowa, would you consider moving to Israel?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I don't see that happening, but look, things could get a lot worse. And look, we had a really good run in America, and it could be it's finally coming to an end. Again, I think that means that will be coterminous with an end of America being what it is. Because my faith in America is so great that I think the things that make America an awesome place make it impervious to anti-Semitism. And I think not impervious, but less susceptible to anti-Semitism. And I think America will have lost something. It will be but it'll be a sign of America losing something about what it makes it America if it turns to that kind of extremism. But, we had a really good run here.
Yeah. And let me, just for the audience, it is remarkable.
Could come to an end.
It is remarkable how philo-Semitic many of the founders were. John Adams, George Washington, the letter. I mean, you see the Yale logo with the Hebrew.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's saying something. You would consider leaving America. Okay, so let's close on this, which is politics after Trump in America.
Yes.
The GOP. Who's going to take it over? Is J.D. Vance? Is it going to be Rubio? Is the Tucker faction going to take over? That seems to be what Megyn Kelly thinks. What do you see is going to come next in the GOP after Trump? What do you fear?
Well, again, I think you're not wrong to be a little panicked, and it could be very bad. I mean, I always answer questions like this with, I think it was Yogi Berra who said it's tough making predictions, especially about the future. I will say that anti-Semitism is a weapon. And this was something I argued in that article too, that it's a weapon in this battle for the future of the right. And if you can say, oh, those people, they're the globalists controlled by Jews, it's a way to sort of tarnish them. On the other hand, and here's where I disagree with a lot of people on the right and left think there's an ideology called MAGA. There isn't. And Trump said this. Trump is not an ideological character. He's just not. Like him or hate him, that's not what he is. And as Trump, I think, said once, MAGA is whatever I say it is. And look, I think a lot of people on the right have switched positions because they want to defend Trump, because they say attacks on Trump is like, he's our guy. So all of a sudden I was anti-Russia and now I'm pro-Russia because Trump seems pro-Russia. He's not that pro-Russia, but he's not as pro-Ukraine as I would like him to be. So it's about loyalty to the person. And there's political science data to back this stuff up, that even to say that this is normally what happens. So Trump is siding with Israel. So the GOP will follow to some extent even after he's gone, because to criticize Israel at this point, you're going to have to criticize Trump. And that's going to be hard to do. On the other hand, that's the positive argument. The negative argument is once he's out of the picture, it'll be easy to do. And he's gone. But as long as he's alive, he's going to be, I think it's probably in general for the worst. He's going to be a presence in American politics. He's going to be commenting on Truth Social.
Well, now he's a good. Look, if in the war between the Tucker faction and the Trump faction, I am a passionate fighter in the pro-Trump faction.
Oh, me too.
Just one funny thing about media consumption. I had this light bulb moment last year, which is I realized Trump doesn't really use the internet. Do you know that? He doesn't. He's like an old media guy. He reads like physical papers. I don't even think he types his Truth Socials. He just he says it to someone who does it. And I realized if he switched to the internet, I swear to God, I think he would become way more disturbing because of the algorithm and stuff like that in 6 months. And his media consumption is why he's not this sort of evil Nazi. I think Trump is I was wrong. I was very disturbed by the Nick Fuentes meeting. The people who said, no, he was tricked into that by Kanye, they're proven right. He's not an anti-Semite. What they misunderstand about Trump is he would never have been successful if people had seen him with black people, with different types of people. They knew that he wasn't like some Klansman deep down. Yeah. And he's a funny guy. So J.D. Vance, there's a lot of people who say he's actually, behind the scenes, he's actually a good guy, and he's just playing this game, footsie, for the nomination. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. Again, I don't care what his motivations are. I don't care what he thinks about Israel and Jews in his heart. I think he's not been a friend to a successful American policy. He's not been a friend to the Jews, and he's not been a friend to Israel in his public pronouncements in the past year or so. My suspicion is that he wants to win the anti-Semite vote. He wants to win the Tucker vote because there's going to be this battle for the nomination. And he knows he can get those people on his side. And if he's thinking, okay, it's going to be me versus Rubio, Rubio probably already has the Jews on his side. He already has the neocons on his. Not that they're neocons anymore, except for me, but those people, who want a robust American foreign policy that is, that see America as a force for good in the world, they're going to go with Rubio. So Vance says, I can get the other people on my side. I'm going to get the anti-Semites on my side. I'm going to get the isolationists on my side, and all these things. When he was asked that question, about Israel controlling American foreign policy and the way he doesn't want to offend these people. And that's scary. I mean, who knows what he's going to be like in office, if he's ever in office? Who knows if he's going to win? Look, who expected Trump to win the nomination in 2016? For all we know, Chris Christie is going to be the nominee in the next. You never know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I worry about people pinning all their hopes on Rubio because just stylistically, I think he's sort of the old era of like the stump speech. And I do think there's this sort of podcast. You have to be sort of real now. So I think we need to find another person to take on Vance too. So let's talk about the alliance with Israel. If the leaders of Israel went to you, Andrew, and they said, we're doing our 10-year planning, okay, internal planning.
Yeah.
Should we be planning on the U.S.-Israel alliance being the solid alliance like it is now in 10 years?
Oh, my God. I'm glad nobody's asking me that question. Who matters? I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, you don't matter.
No.
Nobody in a position of responsibility matters. You matter a lot to me. But I'm glad I think they need to start planning for something else. There's a good article on the subject of the aid by Rafi Ben-Levi, who I've worked with before in Foreign Affairs. I'm surprised Foreign Affairs published somebody as smart and competent and grounded in reality as him. But I think they have to plan for the possibility that things are really going to go south and that the nature of American aid is going to change anyways in a changing world, where there's competition with China, where people don't want foreign aid, where Israel is again doing something differently. But I don't think you should discount the American-Israel alliance quite yet. It's a natural alliance. And I think Israel has shown in this war what it can bring to the table. And if you're an American president and you're in a tough spot with China or God knows what problem, you're going to want Israel on your side in one way or another. But yes, I mean, Israel has to now assume that it can't trust its security to the weird fluctuations of American politics. And they should be preparing for the worst.
Can Israel afford to build its own fighter jet?
I don't know. People understand this better than I do. But they can also keep retooling old fighter jets. I mean, already there's the F-35, which is shown to be incredible. And then there's the F-35 Adir, which is the Israeli souped up version,
Yeah.
which is already showing itself to be better.
With the software, can the U.S. like turn it off? Do you know by any chance? It's a hard question.
I've heard reports about that being a problem. I don't know. I know Israeli was negotiating about it. I'm not a military affairs expert.
I just have this nightmare. I'm thinking about trying to get somebody to do a billboard campaign in Israel called the Bring Back the Levi campaign, because I almost like a prophet in the Tanakh or something. I'm like, I have this horrible vision of like 10 years, some surprise Turkish attack, President AOC, and Israel says, we need new parts for our airplanes. And she just says, no.
2033 has begun in a deadly way, with Turkey launching a surprise attack on Israel. As Israel scrambles to respond, President Sanchez says the United States is urging restraint, but in a major break with past policy, the White House says it will not send Israel critical American-made jet parts, citing ongoing Israeli settlement activity.
We urge peace, but will not be providing resupply at this time.
And I fear that.
And there are people thinking about this now. Who knows? Maybe the United Arab Emirates and Israel will be having a joint project to make their own fighter jets.
Yeah. So let's close on Israel. So my view, since we talked, I've had a lot of change in views on Israel. I don't know if you know this, but one of the biggest things was actually experience on Google Maps 3D. You ever done that 3D mode?
No.
Google Maps, and you can put in 3D mode, and you can sort of fly like an airplane on the ground, and you see the topography. And I literally just went to Israel, and I went to what would be the West Bank border by Ben Gurion Airport, 5 miles away, and I saw the hills overlooking Ben Gurion, and I just looked. And that visual of how close it was, I mean, like a child could fire an RPG and shut down the airport. That one visual totally changed my view on two-state solution, the viability of that. And I'm like, this is just, come on, this is not going to work. Those ridge lines.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that there used to be that, like, I don't know which prime minister used to take every visiting person on like a helicopter tour where they would do just that and say, like, look at the, But anyways, go on.
Yeah, no, I think topography is huge. I mean, two factors people just don't discuss enough: topography, and then economics. The fact that Gaza hasn't had to work in 20 years with so much aid. Yeah. So that changed my view on it. And then I started thinking about Gaza and the West Bank as entities. And I sort of started to wonder if the truth of this entire conflict, and the reason it never ends, is because the War of 48 was never decisively ended. Okay? They created these limbo regions, and it's like, what are they? And it's just kept the conflict on a low boil forever. Now, this doesn't even matter, I guess, because I guess Israel's just stuck with it either way in this impossible situation. Tell me, do you disagree with this sort of different thought? Is Israel just stuck in this impossible situation? Yeah.
So these things are problems because there's an Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Yeah. It's not that there's an Israeli-Palestinian conflict because of these problems. Yeah. And I think, Vladimir Jabotinsky, the Zionist leader, I mean, he's one of my guys from Odessa, a Russian intellectual and playwright who became a leader of Zionism. He had it right from the beginning. Where he has this wonderful essay called The Iron Wall. Like everything else he wrote, he wrote it in Russian. And he says, basically, the socialists, the Zionist socialists, and even this was what Herzl thought, they think that we can make peace by kind of buying off the Arabs. I mean, there weren't Palestinians at that point. This was not the term used. It was just the Arabs. That we can give them economic development and all this stuff, and they'll be happy with that. It's like they have a sense of national honor. Wouldn't anybody have a sense of national honor, right? We don't want Israel for economic development. We want it because we want to have honor as our Jews, and they do too. And the only way we're going to convince them is we're going to fight a war. We're going to fight another war. And we have to have this iron wall where we keep winning. And one day they're going to realize that we're here to stay. And that's what's going to happen. One day you're going to get a generation of Palestinian leaders who are going to say, you know what? Fighting Israel is really dumb. It would be much better to have some economic prosperity. let's have Palestinian Zionism and have a state and create a state in the West Bank. It'll be tiny and it'll be small, but it'll be wonderful. And once that happens, you can solve the problem with Gaza. You can solve the problem with the borders, everything else. You know, Switzerland is a country that has like 5 different languages and ethnicities and 3 different religions. And these people were slaughtering each other. You know why the Pope has Swiss guards?
Why?
Because the Swiss got so good at war. Because these people were like, these like little religious minorities were like killing each other in these mountains, that they started hiring themselves out as mercenaries in the 1600s, 1500s. Mercenaries were the way to go. So people hired them because they got so good at war. Now everybody gets along. You know, once that happens, there could be any solution. Maybe we'll see a future where Palestinians will slowly become citizens of Israel. And it'll just be a big country where they're patriotic Zionist Israeli Arabs. It's not going to happen overnight. That could happen. Maybe it'll be confederation with Jordan. Who knows?
Have you read Daniel Pipe's book?
Not his.
It's
no,
very,
I haven't.
you're very on the same page. He's basically says you have to crush the hopes among Palestinians of destroying Israel. Yeah, and I think actually a key way to do that is for Israel to become less reliant on America, because I think that if I'm a Palestinian, that's what would give me hope. I would be thinking once they lose the American superpower backer, then we got them. And so I think if they saw Israel like able to stand on its own, they'd be like, "Oh wow, they are really strong. It's not a superpower." I made this little visual thing of the 3 paths I see for Israel. Do you see that?
Yes. Okay.
Which path would you take?
I mean, probably, you know, it's not a false binary because there are 3 options, but I think, you know, it's too hard to say in this sort of simplified version. I like this a lot, but I think probably I'd be most inclined to the quiet status quo path, that you don't want to. Israel should not be annexing the West Bank or anything like that. It should, again, like Don Shuftan said, like solutions are for crossword puzzles. Like it shouldn't be trying to say this thing. Elliot Abrams wrote this great thing for us more than 10 years ago now, where he started off by saying everybody says that the situation in the West Bank is unsustainable. Well, you know what? It's lasted longer than any other situation in most of the Middle East. So, you know, worry about fixing the problems that are easy to fix. Don't do anything that'll seal off future possibilities. Again, I just like what I said about the Iron Wall. I think that's true. I think also, you know, as the Arab world, if Iran falls, the Arab world gets more and more disillusioned with the Palestinian cause. It's not helping them. You know, Turkey may pick it up at some point, but even then, it's not going to be the same, and they'll have different interests. The situation will change, and you have to wait for that to happen, and then you'll solve the problem, and it'll be easy.
I wonder what's your take. I think that there's a technological development that could have an impact on the amount of American Jews that move to Israel, which is eventually in the next 5 years, we will get these glasses that will be able to turn Hebrew letters on a billboard into English instantly. And also like AirPods that instantly translate Hebrew to English. No, I'm not even joking. Like, do you think that could have a impact?
Maybe. You know, it's funny because in a very different way, I talked to Hillel Halkin about this in a video interview we did, which is, you know, on the Mosaic website. I'll send it to you. It was just a small part of a longer conversation, but we were talking about language and stuff like that. I mean, to me, that's terrifying.
Why?
And sad, because you lose language and you lose all its subtlety and you lose all the sort of layers of meaning. Lots of people speak English anyways. I mean, you can get away living in Israel and not speaking Hebrew. But also, look, I mean, my grandfather came to this country in the 1940s after World War II. He was already, I assume, I guess like 30-ish years old. So very hard to learn a language at that point in your life. He always spoke with a heavy accent. But he and my grandma managed okay because they had to.
But the
and
alphabet,
if Jews feel they have to, yeah,
it's about learning that alphabet. Is there any kind of like give some Jewish source material that you would recommend as like, or maybe non-Torah stuff like the Passenger books that sort of give hope or can sort of guide in regards to the dark stuff we've discussed? By any chance?
That's a tough question because there's
tough.
so many different ways to go in. I mean, the Hebrew Bible is not an easy book anymore to get into, but it's a story of, somewhere in there, it tells a story about things going right and everything going wrong, and it ends with the Jews coming back to the land of Israel. What could be better than that? And their whole world is destroyed. The temple is destroyed, and they all come back. But if I don't know if that's answering the question that you're asking.
The Day of Remembrance, that holiday, was the day Khomeini was killed. And what do you read on that day? It's remember what Amalek did to you. And it's basically the Amalekites.
Shabbat Zachor.
Do you think that was a coincidence?
As someone who believes in God, it's like very hard to think it was not a coincidence. On the other hand, as somebody who's like a kind of cynical, skeptical person, who knows?
Persia, the same country, yeah.
Yeah, but it's pretty it's pretty amazing. There are times like as a religious person or even as a non-religious person, you have to look around and say, just the things that have happened to the Jewish people. To think that right, what's the story? The story is they tried to kill us. They failed. We survived. Let's eat. But the idea that you'd have this terrible disaster happen to the Jews in the 1940s, one of the worst, it's such a disaster that it's held up in history everywhere as like the absolute worst thing that can happen is the Holocaust, right? And then 3 years later, the Jews come back to their homeland, revive their language, win a war against all these different peoples, and you can understand. I can understand as a historian why each of these things happened and put each of the parts together. But when you look at the big picture, how can you not see that as some degree of the hand of God? And also, it's so much like all the other stories we have where there are these disasters and these triumphs and these like incredible salvations. It's kind of mind-boggling.
How does a country constantly under attack that's so small now have a higher GDP, or I forget the number, than like Great Britain and Germany?
Per capita. Yeah, it is miraculous. And even the fact that everybody's talking about Israel, that like it or not, the Jews are always going to have a sort of importance to the world outside of their size. But if you read in the book of Leviticus towards the very end, and Leviticus is like one of those books nobody likes to read, but if you go towards the very end, there's this passage that just tells of like the most horrible things happening to the Jews or the Israelites, and these diseases, and there's exile and all this stuff. And it's just horrifying, and it's long. It goes on for like 50 verses. And it even says basically what I just said, that people are going to say, like, oh, I hope what doesn't happen to the Israelites happen to you, because that's like the worst possible thing that could happen. And people are going to make fun of you, and you're going to be so traumatized that even like the sound of leaves rustling is going to make you panic. And then God is going to remember you and take you back to the land. I'm a religious Jew. I believe this is like literally the word of God. Like I'm very like conservative in my beliefs. But even if you take the academic view that this was written hundreds of years later, that this was written maybe in the 5th century BCE or the 3rd century, it's still mind-boggling that this is like has happened in the lifetime.
Mind-boggling. Khomeini's killed on the Day of Remembrance. Yeah. Remember what Amalek did to you in Persia, where Haman was from, the same exact place. And what was the Amalekites? They were a group of people who went through the desert for no reason, just this irrational hatred to attack the Jews.
Yeah.
Look at Iran. They have no reason to be obsessed with destroying Israel. It's the parallels are amazing. When you look for good people you think are wise and talking or writing about the Torah. Could you give any names by any chance?
So Leon Kass is an incredibly smart guy, and he writes, I'd say, like, not from a religious perspective, in the sense that he's not like writing for an audience of Orthodox Jews. He came to religion late in his life. He's written a bunch of pieces for Mosaic. He's written a bunch of books about all kinds of things. But he's writing from this sort of general American perspective. And if you go to Mosaic, you can find his things. He's written books on Genesis and Exodus. They're really beautiful. So that's one thing. If you go to the website aish.com, this is like totally from like the highest intellectual level to like stuff that's really for a very popular audience. You'll get other things. There's a great book I haven't thought of in a really long time by a guy named Joseph Telushkin, who's a rabbi out in LA. I don't even know if he's still around. I hope he is. Called Jewish Wisdom. That's sort of, it has just all these topics. And for each topic, it pulls together all these Jewish quotes. Some are from the Talmud, some are from like Elie Wiesel, and like these different perspectives. It's like just a great way to get a flavor.
Any other rabbis you love to listen to?
Who are rabbis? There are, but I'm trying to think of people who, a lot of them like will use this sort of like yeshivish lingo that like it's very like you're expected to like kind of be able to understand. You have to sort of understand it already. J.J. Schachter, if you can find anything by him, extremely brilliant. And he has a PhD in history. He's like a Talmud superstar, knows everything. There's a guy, I'm really sort of reaching back to my past, named Mordecai Becker, Becher. I knew him way back when, but I think now he has podcasts and talks that are online and stuff like that. He's very good at explaining things. There's a lot out there.
Thank you so much. And let me say let me tell the audience, Mosaic is so high quality. It's
Thank you.
Really great. Please visit it. Andrew's doing great work. Oh, last thing, who would you vote for if you were in Israel?
I don't know. I really don't know. It depends who runs. It depends who runs, but I really don't know. But it's hard not to want to vote for Netanyahu, given the competition.
It's been so long. You gotta. Anyways.
It's been way too long.
Anyways, thank you, Andrew Koss. You're
thank
doing
you.
Great work, and your equanimity, your serenity is really an inspiration to panicking scatterbrains like myself. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun.